When I first left home at the difficult age of 18 to attend art school halfway across the country, I'm not sure I had realistic expectations for what art school would really be like. Like many of us little silly creative types, I had a very difficult time in high school. I had woes aplenty that I was hoping a big change of scenery and a new daily routine would fix. While I loved my newfound feeling of independence, I definitely did not fully feel the weight of the financial debt I had just incurred, again at 18, and I definitely did not have enough real-world experience to know what paying off my loans, and most crushingly, my loan's interest, would really feel like. But honestly, I would 100% do it all again. I loved my time in art school, and my experience at my alma mater really helped me blossom into my own person. Don't get me wrong, it definitely didn't fix all my problems the way I privately hoped it would, but being able to explore my love for art in an open-minded community of fellow creatives with diverse perspectives was extremely liberating and really helped me mature into a more thoughtful and balanced person, not to mention a much stronger artist. Unfortunately, not everyone I graduated with feels the same way. I actually know a ton of people who have regrets about their time at school and don't feel like the education they received was worth the loans. Attending art school is not the right decision for everyone, but how can you figure out if it's the right decision for you? Jack and I actually get this question a lot, especially in the Subjectively stream chat. While we do our best to give good, concise advice in the moment, we felt a complete answer to this enormous question deserved its own video. We basically want to take you through some pros and cons of attending school for a formal art education, though keep in mind that this is obviously all Jack and I's subjective opinion. Subjective. This means that we're obviously biased by our positive experience with art school, and that we're necessarily only talking about the American secondary education system and American student debt situation. So take everything we say with a teensy grain of salt. While we're trying to, as much as possible, give you a thoughtful and balanced perspective, we also encourage you to do some research on your own that's specific to your unique situation. Look into publicly available data on the specific schools that you're interested in, available on sites like niche.com, and arm yourself with knowledge. Alright, let's finally put the preamble aside and start talking about what art school can do for you. We're going to try to loosely organize our points into three main parts, starting with the first thing that came to mind when I started organizing ideas for this video is also maybe the most obvious pro of attending art school: the advantage of learning in a classroom environment. Personally, I found the structure of attending classes and working on assigned projects to be super helpful. I think a lot of people try to run before they walk when it comes to art making, and so I found the traditional structure of learning foundational skills before moving on to more complicated principles of drawing, rendering, and composition incredibly beneficial. I was the kind of student that applied to art school with a portfolio that was half fan art, because my pre-college art education mostly came from 2010s era Tumblr artists. My high school didn't have a lot of resources allocated to its art program, so I taught myself by copying what I saw online, which definitely left some gaps in my art knowledge. In other words, I didn't have a lot of foundational skills in my metaphorical toolbox before art school, so focusing on the fundamentals definitely benefited me. Not only did I gain a better art foundation, I also gained new vocabulary that helped me meaningfully talk about and critique art. The rigidity of having assignments with deadlines helped me up my productivity and develop discipline. Before art school, I would sometimes go weeks between making new pieces of artwork, which definitely slowed down my potential growth. The structure of a classroom environment works better for some people than others, so definitely ask yourself before applying to art school if a classroom is really a place you would thrive. Like I already mentioned, my high school did not have a big art program. There were 2 classes offered, which were art elective and advanced art elective. both of which turned out to actually just be the same class anyway. My first semester at art school, I was randomly sorted into an oil painting elective that was hugely and unexpectedly influential for me. I fell in love with oils and actually ended up pursuing a double major in both illustration and painting because of that class. Oil painting was something I didn't have experience with or even access to before college, so being immersed in an environment that allowed me to dip my toe into new mediums like oil paint, but not literally on account of the toxins, was a huge plus. To this day, my digital art style is still hugely influenced by oil painting technique and philosophy, and I even made my own brushes that directly sample my college oil paintings. Art schools typically have way more resources than a smaller art program might have access to. From the expertise of the professors, to libraries full of art books, to visiting artist lectures, art schools truly have a wealth of art-centric information that's hard to find equal to. My school, Mass Art, also had an amazing perk where students could get free admittance to many of the art museums around Boston, including the MFA, Museum of Fine Arts, which was an absolutely staggering collection of historical and modern art that was an amazing backdrop for studying illustration. Of all the resources I miss from my school days, free access to the museums is the greatest thing I think I took for granted. All the resources a good art school can give you access to, including exposure to both new resources and new ideas, culminates in a fantastic environment for getting experimental and pushing the limits of what you're comfortable with. Art school fosters experimentation without judgment in a way that's pretty rare and special, and that's definitely worth factoring into your final art school experience. This one might actually be the biggest advantage art school can offer you over another creative career path. The opportunity to connect with a diverse and creative artistic community. Connecting with artistic peers as I became an adult did wonders for both my mental health and personal development. Finding an art community is a great way to ensure your continued growth and help you stay motivated outside of classroom hours. Connecting with other artists as students will also help you build a professional network of creatives after graduation, which is crucial in increasingly challenging and competitive art markets. On a personal note, my best friends are from Mass Art. I occasionally still meet up with my professors at gallery shows, and obviously I found my husband and my business partner at Mass Art. My fellow graduates are amazing, talented people whose company I greatly enjoy, and most of whom I've also professionally collaborated with, either through Subjectively or other projects. I do feel like I have to say that everyone has different experiences with college environments, and I don't want to guarantee that you'll meet your bestie at art school. However, you will definitely have the opportunity to meet amazing people, especially if you spend some time living on campus, and being in the company of creative peers will enrich your experience.
When we first started Subjectively, there was some apprehension in regards to whether or not we should call ourselves professional artists. I guess by some people's standards, we weren't. We hadn't done any work in any field of art that would legitimize our claim, but we did have a professional education. There's a big difference between a young, talented artist who can create strong work and a young, talented artist who can create strong work consistently, share it on social media, build a portfolio, and communicate well with other artists in order to find work or to simply make a name for themselves. Coming fresh out of high school, I was told again and again that I could draw, and this instilled the confidence within me that I was a good artist. However, I was impulsive, stubborn, and perhaps a bit too proud. I honestly believed that if what I drew looked good enough, things like presentation didn't even matter. Applying to art school was crucial for me in learning a bit of humility and discipline. I was shown that just because you're good at something doesn't mean you don't have to try. I had a bunch of really good teachers that whipped me into shape a bit, splashed some cold water in my face, and told me that if I was going to do this for a living, I needed to change my attitude. I couldn't be so stubborn as to never try new mediums. I couldn't spend a single night on an assignment that a teacher gave me a week to complete, and I couldn't just scribble something on sketchbook paper, tear it out, and throw it up on the wall, expecting the class to give it any more attention than my presentation implied that I did myself. Whether it's through attending an art school or your own methods, developing a professional approach to your artwork will lead to you making a living doing what you love, even if that means working for yourself. Even before I got to college, my high school art teacher helped me put together a portfolio. The concept was entirely new to me. At this point in my life, I knew almost nothing about the concept of a professional artist. I didn't even really know people could make art for a living. I was fortunate enough to have a teacher who herself had only graduated from art school a few years prior and knew exactly what schools were looking for. She taught me how to photograph my traditional work so that it showed up in a digital file all nice and clean. She taught me how to add variety to my pieces so that my portfolio demonstrated a full range of my abilities, and most importantly, she taught me how to take my work seriously. Even if you never plan on going to an art college, it's an incredibly valuable exercise to build a portfolio. You don't actually need to apply to any school, but make a portfolio as if you were. Push yourself to do landscapes if your comfort zone is portraits. Force yourself to do a few still lifes, even though they're boring. Then present your work as neatly and as professionally as anyone in the industry would. Give your art the respect it deserves, and people will reciprocate your attitude.
Jack and I both had positive experiences at art schools, so I think we're both necessarily a little bit biased. However, even though we both fondly recollect our time on campus, we also recognize that there are quite a few drawbacks to attending art school, especially if you aren't the sort of person who can excel in a formal learning environment. If you're thinking of applying, definitely keep a few things in mind to temper your excitement. Like we already mentioned, a classroom is not the best place for every person to learn. There's been a lot of cultural discussion and increased awareness of different learning styles this last decade, which is great and long overdue, but at any college, there will still be some courses taught by professors who are just behind the times. I had amazing professors who were excited for what they were teaching and able to engage the class on multiple levels. And I also had professors who, while definitely still excited about their subject matter, were in the habit of teaching the same way they had been teaching for potentially decades. I had many academics that were a lecture format with a PowerPoint slideshow every single class, and I had quite a few studios that were 15 people sitting in a circle and learning through observational drawing for 5 hours, sometimes broken up by an hour or two of group homework critique nearly every meeting. Basically, what we're saying is that if you have trouble sitting still and focusing for long periods of time, learning in a group environment, or retaining information delivered in a lecture format with simple visual aids, you need to seriously consider if paying to attend classes that teach in this style is worth it to you. While colleges usually have extra accommodations for those who struggle to learn in the quote-unquote default way, which is certainly not one size fits all, the quality of those accommodations may vary. If you get the opportunity to tour schools and this is something you're concerned about, definitely ask about alternative accommodations. In addition to being able to thrive during the school year, you'll also want to feel confident that you'll be able to thrive after graduation. Like how not every professor has kept up with alternative learning styles, not every art program has kept up with rapidly advancing technological and industry practices. This was something most noticeable at our school's animation program, which, according to some fellow alums we've talked with, focused heavily on 2D hand-drawn animation and did not adequately keep up with 3D or motion graphic techniques, both of which are more marketable post-graduation. I also personally felt that I could have used more guidance with professional practices and business sense, two things that I felt I kind of had to teach myself outside of school. On that note, it's worth mentioning that there are a lot of free or inexpensive learning resources available online. The gaps in my education definitely could have been filled by websites like Skillshare or Domestika, both of which offer classes close to a $20 price point. To take 4 or 5 classes, analogous to approximately an average college semester workload, you'd still likely only be totaling around $100. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that this is a huge difference from the average art school's tuition cost per semester, which is often upwards of $15,000, sometimes exponentially so. Our school, MassArt, is the only public art school in the country, meaning that every single other art school is a for-profit company. Some schools are definitely more profit motivated than others, so just be careful that you aren't paying for the prestige of attending a big school and really focus on investigating the quality of the education you'll be receiving before signing up for huge student loans. You really can learn so much without ever physically stepping foot in a classroom and for a fraction of the cost. Of course, you'll definitely want to check out the reviews for online classes, which are unaccredited and frequently taught by individuals without teaching experience. Neither of these things are necessarily problems. Many people are naturally great teachers, but it's another thing to be mindful of. Though, as the last few years taught many of us the hard way, digital learning is also not for everyone. Luckily, it's a lot easier to feel out if digital learning is right for you by starting out with a single $20 course than it is to pay for a full semester at art school only to find out it's a bad fit. Online classes and online tutorials are definitely worth trying, but there are some drawbacks as well. Not having a dedicated studio or classroom space for art making can be a big hurdle for some artists, and you likely won't have the same kind of direct access to online teachers you would have at a school. If you are individualistic and self-motivated, learning from home with free or inexpensive learning resources could be a great alternative to a formal education. We already mentioned that most online courses are unaccredited, and you certainly won't receive any kind of formal certificate for watching YouTube tutorials. Luckily, most art jobs do not require an art degree. They can be a great resume booster, but what employers really like to see is, like Jack already touched on, a strong portfolio and competency with industry standard programs, techniques, and practices. Employers care more about the quality of your work than the prestige of your education. Don't get me wrong, a degree can definitely look good on paper, but if a job opening came down between two artists with similar experience, one with a formal education and one self-taught, I guarantee you the one with the stronger portfolio will win out every time.
It's also worth mentioning the opportunities presented to artists by social media and other media sharing platforms like YouTube. Claire and I both had a few odd jobs here and there after graduating college, but we now support ourselves with this YouTube channel and our freelance commissions. It probably goes without saying, but you don't need a degree to make a YouTube channel. That said, you do need discipline, a strong work ethic, and determination if you want to make it your career. I learned these skills during my time at college, but they can be learned anywhere and over any period of time. You may even master these skills along the road to becoming a self-employed artist yourself. Some professions prefer to hire degree holders more than others, especially in communication, industrial, and graphic design spaces. If you want to be an architect, for instance, you definitely need a degree. If you want to be a graphic designer, a degree might help, but it isn't necessary if you have a strong portfolio. And if you want to be a fine artist, a degree is kind of irrelevant.
Tuition is a huge obstacle, and Jack and I both still have loans we're trying to pay down. I will not pretend that these loans aren't a huge financial burden. Quite honestly, I'm not sure anyone is capable of fully comprehending what kind of huge commitment you're saying yes to when you sign up for loans at 18. Taking out enormous student loans is one of those things that has become so commonplace in the US that many young people don't even think twice about making the commitment, which is just weird, right? We really live in a society. While personally attending college would not have been possible for me if I hadn't had my tuition seriously discounted by scholarships, I still ended up with quite a sizable loan. I think I got so excited when I received my financial aid letter in the mail that my brain focused on the big positive number instead of the big negative number that I would still eventually be on the hook for. Part of what complicates the broader cultural issue of the student loan/private education industry is that art jobs in particular do not often pay well, which can make repayment challenging. I'm writing the script right after the Supreme Court released its decision to strike down POTUS's student debt relief plan, so the burden of student debt is feeling particularly heavy right now. Student debt is such a burden that it truly is not an option to wait to find the perfect job after graduation. Many artists work a side job, various gigs, or even have non-art full-time work because they do not have a choice if they want to be able to pay rent and loans on time. More and more, you have to wear a lot of hats to succeed as a full-time artist, and even if you do everything right, it can take time to find your footing. I kind of hate that I have to say this, but even if you do attend art school, there is a very real chance that you will have to pay art school loans with money from a non-art job. I also truly believe that with enough hard work, it's possible for just about anyone to eke out an art career, but there is no guarantee that it will happen quickly, or that when you do finally start to gain momentum, that it will be enough to be totally self-sufficient right away. You will need a lot of discipline and patience to succeed. Given everything that we've talked about so far, I hope you understand that whether or not you should attend art school is truly an enormous decision. Though Jack and I are happy to share our positive experiences at school, we also don't want to gloss over the cons. We don't want to tell you what to do, but rather arm you with knowledge that will help you make the decision yourself. There are a few big points I'd like to reiterate that should especially factor into your final decision making. Firstly, make sure you are doing plenty of research before you apply to school. Research your intended field, the optics of finding full-time work in that career path, and how much you might reasonably expect to make when you're starting out. Research if you even need a degree, and if not, figure out if you might be able to accumulate the necessary skills independently with just online or community resources. Secondly, you need to ask yourself some hard questions. Can you succeed in a classroom? Will you benefit from being immersed in a college environment surrounded by other students and learning from a structured curriculum? Perhaps most importantly, will you be able to stay motivated after school? Some people who graduate from art school stop making art altogether, which just makes me sad. No judgment to those people because life is hard and life is expensive. But I do want to say that if you don't think you can find a little grit within yourself after you finish your education, you may end up regretting your art school loans. If you want to be an artist, know that going full-time will take self-discipline and a lot of hard work, even with a comprehensive education and strong portfolio. We know some people go to art school because their parents want them to go to college and they feel like art is the only thing they're good at. And honestly, that is such an utterly terrible reason to saddle yourself with student debt. I know it sounds harsh, but if you truly don't care, you are wasting your time and money. Art careers are too hard and too competitive for that kind of blasé attitude. If you don't have passion, you will probably not succeed. You will be so much happier if you look for a different career. It's fine if you weren't sure, but maybe take a gap year and save up some money while you figure stuff out. But I am begging you to not rush right to art school just because you feel like it's what you should do. Again, you have to make the final decision yourself. I really hope this video has helped you better understand your options. We wanted to make a video that would have been helpful for us to see back when we were trying to figure out if attending art school was the right choice for us nearly 10 years ago. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching, and we truly hope you found everything we talked about today helpful. If you want to support our content and our art career journey, please consider checking out our Patreon and pledging to receive really cool exclusive monthly rewards. Please also consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. It really helps us out in the algorithm, and it's free. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace, guys!